So if you clicked on this video, you're probably thinking about moving to Japan, maybe studying in Japan, and what I'd like to tell you is that I'm leaving Japan. I've been here for nearly 5 years, and the amount of relief I feel knowing that I'm getting out of here is unreal. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I want to reach people who are even having an inkling of a thought of moving to Japan, and I want to reach them and be honest and sort of go against most of the other content that you can find on YouTube about Japan, which is extremely positive and rarely ever talks about the negative aspects of living here. So I will preface this by saying that hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be truly having a second thought about whether or not you'd like to live your life here. And as well, I'd like to say that I'm not talking about coming to Japan to be a student. I'm not talking about coming here for tourism. I'm talking about coming here to build a life, essentially, to live and work here, okay? If you want to come here to study Japanese, if you want to come here to buy all the manga and all the video games and all that stuff, please come. You will have the time of your life. You will really enjoy it and you will not want to leave. But if you're coming here to live and work for the foreseeable future, girl or guy, think twice, okay? I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, my background, what led to me coming to Japan and living here for the past nearly 5 years, and what's led me to want to leave. So if you're interested in that, please keep watching. Right, so a little bit about me. My name is Courtney, and I'm originally from the US, from the state of Virginia. And I first moved here in 2020, March 2020, so it was actually right before the pandemic. So I came here for graduate school, which was 2 years for me, and I've pretty much been here ever since. And I have always wanted to move to Japan, to live here, to work here, to speak Japanese every day. That was my dream. That was the dream of my much younger self, because I've been interested in Japan and the language and the culture and everything since I was like 8 or 9 years old, like that young. So I remember, like, as I grew up, as I moved on to middle school, that was the first time where I could actually study Japanese within a school setting, because up until that point, I was just studying myself and then going on to random websites and like learning how to write kana and kanji and all of that stuff. So ever since elementary school, really, I have been studying some type of Japanese, and it was always in my mind that like I was going to go to Japan and I was going to live there, and I was just going to experience life there. So I remember in middle school, I was looking up study abroad programs. Maybe I could do some sort of like high school exchange program. And then when I made it into university, it became a lot more doable or affordable. So my third year of college, I came to Japan for the first time for a semester of school. And so I stayed for like 5.5-ish months, and I loved it. I had such a good time. And I regretted so much only doing the semester, not a full year. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm definitely coming back. Like, this is not the last time that I'm going to be here. So anyway, fast forward, I do eventually make it back to Japan through this master's program that I got into. And like I said, I've been here ever since. So I guess I'm going to start off by, sort of differentiating between, again, the student / tourist and the actual working person. So life in Japan is so great if you are a tourist or even a student, just because I think it's like this anywhere. Once you start working, it's just like boom, real life. But the contrast here is just so stark, because when you're in school, at least you have your like campus community and your friends that you make in school. When you're a tourist, you're only here for a short amount of time, so you're going around, you're hitting all the hot spots and all the places that you've always wanted to go, and then you're out and you're like, that was great, can't wait to do it again next year. And then again, when you're a student, it's like, it's even better than being a tourist, because you get to be here long term. Like my program was 2 years, so I got to stay in Japan for 2 whole years as a student. Yes, the work itself was freaking hard. Yes, it was hard to do a thesis during the pandemic, but I got it done. And even though at that time, I'll get into it maybe in another video, at that time, it was just so difficult getting through the program. When I look back on it, compared to my life now as a working person in Japan, I'm just like, yo, I did not even know how easy I had it, and like how I really was just chilling compared to now. So that's why I say this video is not for people who are looking to live here short term, or just be here and experience Japan short term. It's about being here permanently, pretty much. So where should I start? So I'm going to talk about a few points that led to my reasons for basically falling out of love with my life here. Because I should also say that when I came here in 2020, I had it in my mind that I would just be here forever. That's just what I knew to be true at the time. So let me start with number one. And number one is basically the job market here for foreigners. Everything that I say in this video is going to be from the perspective of a foreigner living in Japan. Okay. So the job market here is actual shit. It's horrible. And you really see that in what types of jobs are most popular for foreigners here in Japan. I think everyone knows that the most common job that most foreigners have in Japan is English teaching. And there's a reason for that. It's attached to the most common visa that's given to foreigners coming to Japan. And, most people who want to come to Japan, they think, I'll come here, I'll get a visa through an English teaching company, and then after I work there for a while, I'm going to move on to a different company. That's what most people do. And to be able to get these English teaching jobs, you've got to have a specific visa status, and for that visa status, you have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree. So as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you can get this visa. And it doesn't have to be in any specific major or anything. Any major, as long as you have a 4-year bachelor's degree, you can get this visa status and you can come over here and you can teach English, which is what most people do. Now, aside from English teaching, from what I've seen, the only other options, and this is if you don't know Japanese or if your Japanese is not so good. The only other options I've seen are recruitment and working in the IT sector. So being an engineer or something like that. That's really all that I've seen here. So that's pretty much it. And the reason for that is, even if you are a foreigner who is very fluent in Japanese, every single time the companies here are not going to want to hire a foreigner over a Japanese person. And you might think, well, duh, super obvious. I mean, Japan's going to want to hire Japanese people. But actually, what they do is these companies, these so-called global companies, will post job postings asking for, a bilingual receptionist, bilingual administrative assistant, and stuff like that. And I remember while I was really deep in my job search, I remember thinking like, oh, okay, like I can do this. Like, this is great. Like, I know Japanese and English, plus I have experience in administrative support, be fine for me. But what I realized as I got deeper and deeper into my search is that most of these companies are not looking for foreign talent. They're looking for Japanese, bilingual Japanese. And what bilingual means to them is that obviously the person speaks their native language and then they speak a smidgen of English. That's it. That's all they're expecting. So that upon the odd chance that maybe they have to deal with, a foreign customer or client, they can have that person help out. But, that's what they're looking for. They just don't say it. They don't say, we're looking for a Japanese person who can speak English and Japanese. But it's implied, pretty much. And that's what I came to understand. And I've talked with other friends here who are looking for the, same types of positions. And just for a bit of context, like after I finished grad school, I also went into language school for about a year and brushed up on my Japanese there. And so some of my former classmates also looking for jobs, they were having trouble. And I'm just thinking like, but why? Because like we have the skills. Why are we not getting at least interview opportunities or anything? And so I came to realize that like we are just not on their radar at all, except for English teaching, or like I said, working in the IT sector. Because if you don't have Japanese skills, you can easily work in the IT sector because the languages you need to know are, I won't even say them because I don't know them, but all of those tech type languages like C, C++ or whatever. As long as you have that, you'll be fine. And you'll maybe just need to know the most minimal Japanese, like hello and goodbye and whatever, stuff like that. So it was really rough realizing the state of things as I started working full time, because in my case, I had quite an extensive job search, and then I realized my visa is going to be running out. So I've just got to get something. So I ended up getting a job in English teaching, and I'm so glad I took it actually, because it just, again, made me realize the state of things. And when I say that, I mean, I looked from the inside while I was there, and I realized, oh my God, like there are people teaching English here who have multiple degrees, myself included, like what, bachelor's, master's. There were people there with PhDs who had been teaching for like years on end. And I'm just like, this cannot be life. Like, this cannot be it. Like, what? How? Huh? And then even within the English teaching industry, there is literally no room for advancement. Like, none. Literally none. I realized like, oh wow, okay, I've been here for 6 months. Cool. Like, maybe I can get some newer opportunities. And then I realized that I'm working with people who had been there for like 7-8 years, and they're still doing what I'm doing. And that just made me think really hard, like, this is not life. Like this, I cannot. So I ended up moving on to something else. But I just thought, you could have multiple degrees, but all that's here for you is English teaching. And, turnover is crap as well. So high. And I busted my ass in this job, but I never really felt like I was appreciated or making a difference or anything like that. So to summarize, if you're thinking of moving here and building a life, and you are not passionate, and when I say passionate, I mean passionate about teaching, don't come here. Don't come here. If you are not interested in improving your Japanese to maybe get into some other jobs besides English teaching, don't come here. You will be miserable. And this is coming from someone who, you know, I taught English, and then I ended up working with a temp agency. So now I do like contract work, and I moved on to like working an administrative position. But you know, even in moving out of English teaching, I've thought like, you know, this is just the way that Japanese society devalues the skills of foreign workers is just like really appalling to me. So it's just like I can't. So one other point I want to make with that as well is that there's this thing here that I've noticed, that if someone who started, you know, teaching English in Japan manages to move on to a job that's outside of the education sector, even if that job runs them into the ground, makes them miserable, they won't leave it just because it's not English teaching. That's the state of things. So it's either suffer in being devalued in English teaching, or suffer in doing a quote unquote regular job or better job here in Japan, and just be miserable. So that's the reality of that. Moving on, I also wanted to talk about Japanese society in general, and what I've realized after living here for a long period of time that I would never have been able to realize just being in Japan as a student. One thing I've been thinking of a lot in the past like 2 years, and I'm just putting this into perspective for you. I spent the first 3 years of, you know, life here as a student in some capacity, and these past 2 years I've been a working adult. So in the past 2 years, I've realized that Japanese culture compared to my own native culture, compared to American culture, is the word that just kept coming into my mind is cold. It's just cold. Like, I know that the image of Japan online, a lot of people like to say, oh yeah, Japan is an introvert's paradise. No, it's not. And I say that as an introvert. It's not an introvert's paradise. It's a hermit's paradise. Because that's what people do here. I have neighbors that I've lived by for years. Don't know them from Adam. Couldn't tell you their name. A lot of them, I couldn't even tell you what they look like. I know what they sound like because I can hear them through the walls, but I don't know their face. And honestly, like, that's just how it is everywhere. There's no sense of like community. There's no sense of like, oh my God, if something were to happen to me, I can knock on so-and-so's door and they'd help me. There's no sense of that. Yes, I'm generalizing because I live in the city. That's the attitude in the city. I'm sure if I go to the countryside somewhere, it'd be so much different, but that's the general trend. Ask friends as well, and that's the same. You know, they don't know their neighbors either. People just keep to themselves here, which when you think of that from a, you know, perspective of like, oh, well, I'm tired of people. Like, I don't want to talk to people, and I wouldn't mind just being up in my room all day and playing games or scrolling through YouTube or whatever. It sounds nice. I get it, because like I said, I'm an introvert, and there are times where I'm just like, man, fuck people. Like, I just want to stay inside all day. But then there are also times where I'm just like, I want to get out, I want to walk the town. I don't necessarily need to meet anyone, but I like having that experience of just walking through town, maybe, accidentally making eye contact with people and sending them a smile. Like, people just don't do that here. Everyone's just, that's it. People are always in their own world, or within their own unit, I should say. Okay, because like, if you're a family, you're out and about, or if you're with your friend, you're out and about, like, they're in that bubble. But also just like passing so many individuals throughout the day, and in my head thinking like, wow, we're all here in this city enjoying the day, and then realizing like, there's just this vibe that people are just afraid to like connect with each other or talk to each other, because there's such a culture here of not causing people trouble. Like, in Japanese, it's meiwaku. So if you cause meiwaku to other people, like, you might as well just like pack it up and like kill yourself, pretty much. Like, that's what it feels like here. People feel like if they encroach on you in any way, whether that be like, oh no, oh, I'm in your space, let me step to the side, my bad, or like, oh no, we made eye contact in the elevator, people just, they just don't interact. And then it's like to the point where I miss that so much that I just, when I first came here, I did, read the room and be like, oh, Japanese people don't do this, Japanese people don't do that. But when it came to a point where it's like, oh my God, like, this girl's nails are really cute, like, am I not gonna tell her that? And I did. And then when I saw the look on her face, as if like, she hadn't gotten a compliment in years, or that, she looked so like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I just thought, what's life without those like little sweet interactions that you can have with strangers? Just add brightness to somebody's day, and vice versa. It's just not a thing here. And I know that like, it sounds really cool. For example, you see on TikTok certain creators saying like, look at this cool new restaurant in Japan. You don't even have to talk to anyone, and you don't even have to see their face. Oh, robots serve you. There's no human contact. Isn't this so cool for introverts? Y'all, it gets old real fast. Really fast. Like, it's kind of scary at times to think about the fact that like, people just go through life just with no community, like no sense of belonging. Here in Japan, it's like everyone belongs to the community of Japanese and Japaneseness, and once you step outside of that community by doing something that you shouldn't as a part of the Japanese community, you become alienated. So it's like, I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, let me move on so I'm not rambling too much. My second point is, about Japanese society that has made me really do double and triple takes, is discrimination here is so fucking normalized, and it pisses me off that people do not talk about this online. Like, I just don't understand. I know, some people talk about it on Reddit and other things, but like, why don't people just sit down, be honest, and make a video about the fact that you will literally be denied housing based on the fact that you're not Japanese? It is so common, and it is so baked into, the whole foreigner life in Japan. Yeah, you will have trouble finding an apartment because yeah, da, da, da. It is just straight up discrimination. And you know, I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, it's racist," but I'm not going to use that word just because I feel like when people hear the word racism, they kind of tune out and they're like, "Oh my god, people saying everything is racist. Oh, the Americans saying everything is racist." So I am just going to use the word discrimination because that literally is what it is. Straight up, just we are not going to give you this housing because you're foreign. And like, based on my own experience, when I first went out to search for an apartment, I remember I did hear about, oh, it's going to be hard as a foreigner. But that was my first time searching, so I was very optimistic. And long story short, I saw some things that were just like, is this real life? Like I told my agent, these are the kinds of houses I would like. So he'd call up, you know, the landlords or landlady and be like, hi, we'd like to know if this room is open. Yeah, I have someone who'd like to rent. They're actually foreign. Yeah, but their passport, she's an American. Yeah. And as I was watching him, I was just like, why does he seem so ashamed and apologetic and groveling on the floor about the fact that I'm not Japanese? Like, I was in such shock. So that's the first experience I had. I did end up finding an apartment, but the foreigner-friendly apartment, was fucking old as hell, built in the 70s and extremely small. The rent was very cheap. I'll give it that. Like, but atrocious. So my second experience in house searching was after I met my husband. At the time, he was my boyfriend, and we were searching for a place bigger than what we already had, and we thought that the search would be a lot easier because he's Japanese. But again, I'll just summarize it. We were searching for houses, and they, you know, when I would go, I'd say, well, I'm going to be renting with my husband. And they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, well, he's Japanese. And they go, oh, wow, okay, like, you're going to get the house, no problem. And what ended up happening is that they would see his name. He's half Japanese, so his name doesn't look Japanese at all. And they'd see his name, they call our agent and be like, you said this person is Japanese. And then my agent would scramble and call me and be like, he is Japanese, right? I'm like, you saw his passport. He is Japanese. He's half Japanese, but he's Japanese. Like, it shouldn't make any difference. He literally has a Japanese passport, Japanese blood. And what ended up happening in that case is that after the owner of the home, the landlord, found out that my husband was half Japanese, he said no. So imagine that. Imagine literally being Japanese, having Japanese blood, having a whole ass Japanese passport, speaking Japanese fluently, and you still don't get the apartment because you're not Japanese enough. So that was a whole mindfuck, and that's going into my next point about Japanese society. Just the way Japanese society treats half Japanese people is actually disgusting. Like, and it's so normalized. Again, it's so normalized to, on one hand, objectify half Japanese people because they look so exotic and ooh, but you know, you better be half white, you know. So exotic. But then on the other hand, it's like they're technically foreign-ish. They're not really Japanese. It's just this whole song and dance every time of when a half Japanese person has to explain their background, and you know, people scrutinize it, and it's just crazy. Just hearing stories from my husband of what he's had to deal with here in Japan. He's been living here for the past 7 years, and what he's had to deal with being half Japanese, not being Japanese enough in some instances, but then in other instances he should act more like a Japanese person because he is Japanese. And just seeing everything he's had to go through because of that, it just breaks my heart. And it just made me start thinking about, like, if we were to have children, I would never want to raise them here, ever. Because how can I raise a child and tell them, yes, you have, two parts of yourself, you're Black and you're Japanese, and then have them come home and tell me, but so-and-so said I'm not Japanese because I'm Hafu. I can't. I cannot. So, nope. Can't do it. And I will not lie in saying that is another huge part of the reason why, like, I can't live here anymore. Lastly, third point on Japanese society is the way that it views English and foreign-ness. Like, I hope I can explain this well, because this might be something that is very difficult to understand if you don't live in Japan. But English in Japan is not really a tool for communication as much as it is a party trick. Like, English here is just cool. It's cool if you know English. English is compulsory in Japanese schools, but Japanese people rarely ever interact with it outside of school. So once they're done with school, they're done with English most of the time, except for, those who decide, I really like English, I want to keep studying it. So it's weird that it's compulsory here. Literally, the government says you need to learn English, but it's not treated in that way in the slightest. It's like, it's to the point where, like, if you know English, I've seen this happen, like, within English classes that I've taught. If you have a particularly advanced student and their English is really great, other kids will make fun of that kid for being, like, the teacher's pet and for knowing English so well. So they won't want to participate. Or, outside of the school setting, let's say, like, you're at a drinking party with coworkers or something after hours, and, somehow the topic gets on English and they find out, oh wow, this coworker's English is really good. Suddenly that coworker's image in the workplace goes so high because they're like, oh wow, so-and-so knows English, he's so cool. But most Japanese people, like, could not give a shit about English, and the way that it's taught in schools is very subpar. It's very lacking. And it's no wonder why kids aren't interested in English, because of the way that it's traditionally taught, which is like rote memorization or something. So this, like, English being cool aspect is kind of linked to foreignness also being cool in certain regards. Like, when a Japanese person who maybe has an interest in, other cultures or foreigners or whatever, it's kind of like at a very superficial level. They don't actually want to get to know your country and who you are as a person. They want to get to know about all the stereotypical stuff they know about who you are, who you might be. Like, for example, it's really common here in Japan when you introduce yourself to, like, introduce the country that you're from, and say, like, oh yeah, I'm from America, I'm from Italy. So let's say someone were to say, yeah, I'm from Italy. Then the person will be like, oh, wow, you're from Italy. Do you like pasta? Or, like, if someone were to say, oh yeah, like, I'm from Ghana. Most Japanese people hear the word Ghana and they just think chocolate, because there is a chocolate brand here in Japan that goes by the name of Ghana. So you can say, oh, I'm from Ghana. Oh, like the chocolate. Or, like, yeah, I'm American, and, oh, wow, you know where I can get a good burger? Just, like, foreign people and foreignness are, like, here in Japan, I feel like to Japanese people, being foreign is such a spectacle. And it's really, like, it's not like they're seeing you as another human being just living their life. It's like you're a caricature of what they think the outside world looks like. And that just really bothers me. So, yeah. If you've made it this far, I thank you for listening, and I hope that this video was able to give you some insight into why it might not be the best decision for you to move here and try to build a life here. I will reiterate that if you want to come to Japan for vacation, if you want to come here for schooling, I highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're coming here as a student, because there's so many scholarships, and most of the time your school can be mostly or fully paid for. So if you'd like to have the experience of living in Japan long term, but don't necessarily want to actually work here, be a student. It's the best thing that you can do. I've just felt like this huge shift in what I want out of my life, and obviously my husband has had a lot to do with that. I came to Japan, I wasn't interested in dating, I wasn't interested in relationships, really. And after meeting him, through him, I got to see even more of those parts of Japan that now I'm talking to you about. And I wonder a lot, like, how long would it have taken me to see that if I wouldn't have met my husband? But a part of me thinks I would have realized, maybe in not as quickly of a time, but I probably would have realized. And I'm making this video because I wanna prevent what I see here a lot, which is foreigners coming to Japan expecting to be able to build a life and live here comfortably, and realizing that it's not turned out the way that they planned. With all of that said, all of my points being made, I kind of want to move on to what's in our future. We are planning to move back to the States now. We're in the process of that, and like I said, like, just the relief that I feel is just crazy, because I never would have imagined when I first left the States that I would miss so much about certain parts and aspects of my culture, particularly from a social standpoint. Like, I just miss that so much, and just having a community to fall back on. So anyway, we are very excited for that. And I really hope that someone, even if it's just a single person, I hope someone can benefit from this video. Maybe just, again, take the time to think about if this is something that you really want. Like I said before, if you're going to come here as a student or a tourist, you're going to really love it. And for students who come here and maybe, are thinking about, hey, maybe after school I want to stay, the same advice still applies. Just really think about it and realize that student life is very different from real life. But I think I've said pretty much everything I need to say, and this has been kind of therapeutic for me. So thank you for letting me ramble a bit. I know it was kind of all over the place, but I just want people to know that Japan is so much more than konbini freaking sandwiches and vending machines and stupid stuff that comes up on TikTok. Like, it's not cupcakes and rainbows, and you have got to be honest with yourself about that. And If you watch this video and you still think, well, I want to go and I want to experience myself, please do. Your experience might be quite different from mine, but I do feel it's a disservice to people who are wanting to come here, for people who are already living here to not be honest about the state of things. So again, I hope it's been helpful and hope you have a great day. Bye.